Hot on the heels of the holiday season, many find they got more stuff, more garbage, and for some, more debt. Joining us now to help us get to the bottom of our consumerist culture, in Vancouver, British Columbia, Andrea Bennett, Associate Editor of Adbusters. In Hartford, Connecticut, Anthony P. Gresh. He's Assistant Professor of Anthropology at Connecticut College and co-author of Life at Home in the 21st Century. And Jill Pollack, organizational expert and the host of Consumed on HGTV Canada. And with us here in studio, Bruce Philp, branding consultant and the author of Consumer Republic, and Alan Middleton, assistant professor of marketing at York University's Schulich School of Business. And it's great to have everybody both here and in Points Beyond on our program tonight, coming out of the holiday season as we are. And I'm going to start, Jill, with you and ask you just plain and simple, straight out, do we have too much stuff?
Oh, yes, we do. We all do. Even those who think we don't, we have too much stuff.
And why do we have too much stuff?
Well, I mean, everybody tells us that we're going to feel happier, thinner, smarter, sexier if we buy this, that, or the other, you know, and so we believe them. Advertising is very powerful, Andrea, as you know. So it's subliminal and very unsubliminal messaging that makes us feel that we need to feather our nest, over feather our nest. It's, you know, at the moment, it's also a way to have some therapy, right? Retail therapy is a real thing. You know, some of us has sex, drugs, rock and roll, whatever. Buying makes us feel good. It gives us a rush. So that's one of the reasons why.
Let me go to the gentleman beside you. Anthony, I know the first time I heard that expression, retail therapy, I laughed because I thought it wasn't serious, but then somebody assured me it was. What's going on here? Why do we have so much stuff?
I think there are a lot of mechanisms by which we accumulate stuff, by which we accumulate more possessions. We have very few rituals, very few traditions or processes by which we're able to unload those objects. So you mentioned the holidays in the opening bit. The holidays are a major process by which we accumulate, especially for families with children. We live in fairly hyper-nucleated families and households in North America, with extended families spread across the continent and even around the world. Gifting is one way that we can reestablish those relationships, to send tokens of love, symbols of affection, to say we still care. But to some extent, it's unfettered gifting, and it's a process of gifting that plays no small role in advertising consumer products. And so lots of stuff comes in. Kids receive truckloads of toys, for example, but there are no traditions by which we get rid of those things. In the United States, which has only about 3% of the world's children, we consume 40% of the world's toys.
Bruce, let me get you to weigh in on this. Do you think, in your experience, that we, even here in kinder, gentler Canada, have too much stuff?
Well, clearly we do. I mean, you just have to visit a landfill site to see the accumulation of all of our mistakes and errors in judgment and, you know, regretted moments. I think the real core question is not around whether we just have too much stuff, but rather how much of that stuff we have that we don't care about, or don't use, or don't have any utility for. That really is a social crime, and you know, any examination of this issue would be incomplete without thinking about our mistakes.
So do you have any thoughts as to why we want to collect stuff that clearly has no import in our lives, as you put it?
Well, you know, the soul of consumerism, I mean, advertising's been mentioned a couple of times, but the truth is that consumerism's been around for a long time, and a lot longer than mass media has. And the real soul of it lies in the fact that spending our money is one of the most accessible and simple ways we have of asserting our autonomy. So if you show me someone who's feeling, you know, existentially powerless for some reason, I'll show you someone who's about to head to the mall. And it's in those moments that we make the mistakes that end up in landfill sites.
Alan, when we go to the mall, are we truly that powerless to resist the urge that the ads that we've already seen compel us to buy?
It's not just the ads, I agree with Bruce. It's partly the mood we're in, partly it's how we see the world around us at the time. You know, one of my favorite topics is always kitchen equipment. because you can go into virtually anybody's kitchen and ask to see all the useless technology that they've used once because it looked like a good idea. You know, toasters that brown 5 sides kind of stuff.
Juicers.
And it's been used once and it's up there. It's put away. And what led to that is, wouldn't it be a good idea, and I've got the money? But the second kind of buying is mood-based buying. I won't raise the issue of the female gender and shoes, but having just done so, you know, it's a relatively cheap either mood enhancer or mood upper.
Probably no stupider than men with their hockey shirts, right?
Exactly
or baseball
right.
caps or whatever.
Exactly right. Or me with books, which I can't walk past the bookstore.
Yeah.
So part of what we're doing is it's not that we're powerless. It's that we can do it, and the affluent part of our society can do it. And we haven't yet learned the disciplines of thinking forward, do I really need this?
Let's get out to the left coast and find out from Andrea, what is Adbuster's take on all of what we're talking about so far?
Well, I think the answer is obvious. We do have too much stuff. I think Canadians lag behind Americans just a wee bit. And it would take 3 to 5 Earths to support the amount of consumption we're doing. And that number is on the rise every day. So obviously we do have too much stuff, and the question is what we're going to do about that.
So this clearly is more than an issue of buying stuff we don't need, indulging in moods that perhaps we ought not to indulge in. For you, this sounds like it's much more about the future of the planet kind of a debate. Is that right?
Yeah, at Adbusters, we just put a book out called Meme Wars, and there's one sort of infographic that I think says a lot about the way that we see our current conception of consumption, the planet, finance, the economy. I mean, we put finance and the economy first, and then society and the planet come sort of after in concentric circles. And we at Adbusters feel like, we should put the planet back, or maybe not back, but at the center of that discussion. Then maybe society, then economics and finance is sort of a distant last. We have to reprioritize. And it's not something that humans would necessarily do. I mean, this is the question. Is it something that we would do naturally? I think people have been talking about psychology. We're programmed to consume as much as is possible to consume, and it means that our personal debts are going up. And it's counterintuitive to say perhaps we shouldn't consume just because we can. On one hand, it's counterintuitive, but on the other hand, it's incredibly counterintuitive to keep consuming at the rate we're consuming if it means we're going to exhaust the resources of the planet.
Understood. Alan wants a follow-up.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And we have that dilemma, don't we? Right the way through the policymakers. Because on one hand, we want to be more careful about the environment, so we're trying to push people to do less packaging and consume less. But on the other hand, going through the economy, we go, we're in debt, we've got terrible debt, but boy, the economy's not going to take off again unless you spend. So, go spend a little bit, but make sure you can pay for it. So you've got conflicting messages coming all the way through the system.
For those who don't know Adbusters' work, let's just take 30 seconds here, and we're going to play a clip of some of what they're up to. Here's from their latest campaign called Buy No More. Roll tape, please.
The average North American consumes 5 times more than a Mexican, 10 times more than a Chinese person, and 30 times more than a person from India. We are the most voracious consumers in the world, a world that could die because of the way we North Americans live. Give it a rest. November 23 is Buy Nothing Day.
Let me correct myself. Not the latest campaign, its best-known campaign, which came out, as we saw, back in 2007. Does that change people's minds, Bruce?
I don't fundamentally believe that it does. It moralizes, for one thing, which is, trying to make people embarrassed about their ethics is usually a pretty tall mountain to climb, persuasion-wise. And the other thing is it's sort of based on the false assumption that it's possible to not consume, or that it's possible to attenuate your consumption to such a degree that you're not having an impact. And that's just not a realistic objective. I think the The fact that we exist is the reason we consume, and it has been for a million years. The question is, how should we consume? And it doesn't really answer that question at all.
Jill, I know you didn't see it there, but you heard the voiceover. What was your view of the Buy No More campaign ad?
Well, I mean, I love that. I'm pretty into. When I work with people, often I'll say, let's not make a list of things we need. Let's make a list of things we do not need, things you don't need to buy for a really long time. And, it strikes me, I mean, we're talking about, buying things, gifts and technology and things for ourselves, but with people on Consumed and with people that I work with, private clients, a lot of it is because they can't find what they already have, because they're so inundated with their stuff, they go out and it's cheap and easy to just go buy something else. And these big box stores, which are amazing, of course, because things are cheaper, just make it easy to walk in and spend hundreds of dollars on a bunch of stuff that you don't need. If you can't find your scissors, just go buy another pair of scissors. If you can't find your black pants, go buy another pair. And so because we're so stuffed and consumed with things, and because it's cheap and because it's easy, we don't actually take care of the things that we want and we just go out and buy more. It's the old planned obsolescence, and that it's cheap, that it's, what do the French say? Le plus bon marché, le plus cher. The cheaper it is, the more expensive it is, because we just use it and throw it away. It becomes very disposable, and we're not caring for what we have, and we end up being buried by our stuff. So it's just go out and buy more. And so it's not just like, oh, I'd like those bags and I'd like that, those shoes, and I'm going to get myself a new iPad. It's really just, I can't find this, I'll just go to the store and get more.
Anthony, I want to find out more about a study that you were a part of that looked into people's homes. What exactly did you find?
Well, we found what you can only find when you go into families' homes and you see how they're actually interacting with their everyday objects. And so we did what no social science research has really done up to this point. And we moved away from looking at just what consumers are purchasing at the point of sale, looking at in broader consumer survey kind of and self-report data. So we went into their homes and we did it with a series of ethnographic and archaeological methods. And so we systematically counted every object in 32 families' homes in the Western United States. And we saw something that was really quite extraordinary. I think perhaps one of the most salient points to make is that the average American middle class household has more objects per household than any other typical household in all of global history. It's an extraordinary amount of stuff, and people are struggling to deal with the sheer quantity of things that are in their homes. Garages were rarely used to park a car, for example. These objects just consolidated, accrued over time. I think with the expectation that people would get rid of it at some point. But Andrea talked a little bit about sort of unfettered consumption and lack, and there's some discussion about people's inability to perhaps really reflect on the decisions that underlie purchases, that underlie particular consumer behavior. I think you gain that perspective when you step out of your typical everyday life and you walk into someone else's house with an eye toward what it is that they have. And anthropologists are quite good at this. We like to look at that which is familiar and evaluate it for how unfamiliar it is. And what we found is that most families that participated in our study really hadn't come to grips with the sheer volume of things that were in their home.
Well, not only that, Jill, the one thing that the pictures that we just saw screamed out at us was that people clearly don't value open space in their living areas. Why do they not seem to prize that value?
Well, you know what? I believe that, and I say this all the time, people let their stuff own them. And I always say, own your stuff, don't let your stuff own you. It feels very much like a buffet or a dinner party where the hostess says, or all this food is free. You can have this, and we feel the need because it's free or it's cheap or we paid to take it, to eat it, to, you know what I mean, take it in. So if it comes in the house, it's hard to get rid of it. So we feel the need to keep it around. We don't know what to do with it, and I think that's what we've been talking about, is how to actually purge this stuff. And, that's part of the problem. We feel guilty. We took it in. We meant to do it. We should have used it. We wanted to we spent the money on the pants, and so how come we're not wearing them? Or, you know, and I think that getting rid of it is the process why we have such a problem of it. And we really, I mean, you know, we said Anthony had pictures of rooms, the garage, which is not used for the car, and a guest room or an extra room, which is used as a storage room, you know, and a piece of exercise equipment that's used to hang clothes on. We are not even using the items for which they're intended now because we can't keep up with the, you know, jigsaw puzzle just keeps piling on, and it's at some point, you know, people just give up. It's sort of like, oh, I have to lose 10 pounds, I might as well eat another cookie. You know what I mean? It's too much effort to move it, right? It's very Newtonian. A body at rest remains at rest unless acted upon, and it's very exhausting to act upon all the stuff in your house, especially when you don't know what to do with it. You know, you want to recycle responsibly. I bought that to give to the grandkids, so you have to put it in and mail. It's a lot of effort to like parcel it out properly, and so people just leave it. It's inertia.
Okay, Jill. Over here to, let's go to Alan for the next comment.
Yeah. I think one of the things that we've seen change, I mean, Bruce said earlier, consumption's been around since the earliest trading periods. And then leisure consumption has been, as soon as we could afford it and wanted to demonstrate stuff to other people, we consumed. What's changed now is not just planned obsolescence, but technology changes, and the notion that there's constant change means I buy for the moment, not for a planned utilization over a period in time. So people's planning horizons or buying horizons is satisfies me now and when I get home for a brief period in time, and I'll worry about what happens after that. The fact that it's stored, I think, is the really interesting thing, because that says that people occasionally want to go back and say, oh, let me recapture that memory when I had that. We know in business and a whole bunch of areas, it's very hard for people to stop doing things. And that's one of the interesting connections here.
You know, it's true to say that the business of innovation is about, to quote Deming, the ongoing creation of dissatisfaction. You know, he coined that phrase in the 1920s. This is the man who gave us air conditioning in our cars. And so there's a certain, you know, kind of declared intent there on the part of marketing. But we also have to remember that that we don't have a well-developed secondary market for our possessions. You know, there's Kijiji and there's eBay and whatever, but we don't. And the reason for that is that there is some social capital that comes from having new stuff. And until the day comes when I can roll into your driveway in a 15-year-old car and earn your admiration, or wear my dad's overcoat and earn your admiration, I'm not likely to do those things.
So you were looking for a paradigm change then in people's thinking.
Right, driven by values, not by some economic structural, you know, kind of revolution, but by what we think is important.
Yeah. But also what happened to the repair industry?
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, one of the things that's declined over this period in time is the ability to reuse, repurpose, because, you know, trying to find that talent's not there in the service sector.
Well, in fact, an example I love to give has to do with Apple, who often get attacked for making us desire the latest new thing. The reality of it is that most of their products, and I'll say most of their products, actually function for longer than their counterparts in other operating systems in particular, because Apple pays some attention to backwards compatibility and updating operating systems. So the truth is, if you give yourself over to that particular cult, you're likely to have your products last quite a bit longer than your friend across the street who's using a Windows machine, but that isn't what we actually do.
Andrea, do we assume that this is a first world / Western, maybe even just North American phenomenon?
No, not necessarily. I mean, in North America, the middle class is actually decreasing at the moment for the first time in a long time. And so, sorry? Oh, I'm getting feedback. Yeah, so it has been a North American problem for quite some time, but as middle classes grow in other countries like India or United Arab Emirates, we're seeing increasing levels of consumption there. So it's not exactly just a Western problem, but it's primarily a North American problem. I mean, we're sort of in an advanced state of consumption and consumerism and all the values and drives that come along with that.
But as the rest of the world, Bruce, gets a little richer, they're following in the same bad habits?
Well, they have a choice to make, and so far they are following in the same bad habits. But it's very, I think, educational to study consumerism in Western Europe from the post-war period till, you know, really the prior to the current disaster. And European consumerism was different. They tended to buy fewer things, they tended to buy better quality things, and there were fundamentally three reasons for this. One is they live in smaller houses, there's less space to fill. Two is there's less focus on display, which I think is related to that. I think it's also true that they tend to value leisure as an achievement more so than possessions. And finally, maybe most interestingly, they tend to focus more on what makes them different from each other than on what makes them the same as each other. And monoculture tends to promote consumerism.
There's even a contrast to North America, because the research evidence shows, in fact, Canadians consume less products relative to Americans, but consume more experiences. We spend more money on the vacation, more money on the experiences around us. So even within North America, there's a contrast.
Okay, let me go to the folks in Hartford, Connecticut on this one. Anthony, what about that issue? In your experience, is the rest of the world catching up to North America in these bad habits?
I think eventually that will happen unless there's a major philosophical reorientation, and frankly I don't see that happening anytime in the near future. There was a mention of a secondary market. I think Bruce mentioned secondary market as sort of not really being developed, the Craigslist, the eBay, for a place where we can get rid of the innumerable possessions that we accumulate in these very large houses. Americans have some of the largest houses in the world, and these are really, really big containers which we can pack full of stuff without really feeling any major consequences in the immediate. And so there's this material myopia, if you will. But I think most families have good intentions of getting rid of stuff, and so Jill mentioned recycling, Bruce mentioned eBay and Craigslist, and so we squirrel things away, old furniture, old toys and notebooks, unused kitchen appliances, but they still function, and we form some relationship with these objects. It's not necessarily a deep relationship, but we know that there's value in that object. We've assigned some form of value, as ambiguous as it may be. I paid $50 for this object. I should be able to get $30 for that object if I were to sell it. And so we pack it away, and stuff is available quite inexpensively and cheaply. More stuff comes in than goes out. It accumulates. So the time comes around on Saturday when, say, you and your spouse and your kids are hanging out, and it's this small amount of leisure time that you have to enjoy. Do you clean out the garage? Do you clean out the basement? Do you sacrifice the small amount of time that you have to participate in an experience with your family for, sort of unloading some stuff? And I think that's the heart of the problem. Part of the problem is this culture of busyness, is we fully subscribe to a culture of busyness as a marker, as a measure of middle-class success and prestige. And that absence of leisure time is hurting us in the long run. We found among Los Angeles families that despite having invested in quite lovely outdoor spaces, backyard spaces, and an otherwise Mediterranean environment that you can almost enjoy outside year-round, that families and children were scarcely in these spaces, and instead were inside among their stuff.
I think Steve, Anthony makes a really good point, and that is that we feel like the families, they have so little time to be with each other, but that, really is about having too much stuff, because when you're inundated with stuff, there's a lot of time and energy you spend moving things around, feeling guilty about it, building on top of each other. And people always say, oh, well, I can't afford an organizer, or I don't have any time to get rid of my stuff or organize my stuff. And I think to myself, how do you not have time to do it? Because it's not just, people don't realize that it's not just the quick feel-good of acquiring something, but it's really unhealthy on so many levels. We think, oh, it's bad for the environment and it's really a cluttering in our home, but it's affecting us, psychologically. It's affecting us, our health. It's affecting our relationships. People have their, faces in their technology. They literally build physical walls between each other, boxes of games, things that aren't used. People are not eating dinner at their dining room table. Why? Because the dining room table is piled with stuff. They want to play games with their family, but they can't play because there's no room on the coffee table because it's filled with stuff. They each go to their own rooms. They're eating in their own rooms. They're not spending time together because there's too much stuff. And I think that's the problem. We're obviously talking about the environment, and I think that's a huge part of this. But when we're talking about our own environment, feng shui, the issue is your home is really, an extension of your body. And if your home is cluttered and not flowing properly and not healthy, then your relationships, your mind, all that is really a domino effect. So I can't believe that people think they don't have the time to do it. I think they don't not have the time to do it.
Right. Let me read something here from Amitai Etzioni that he wrote in the Huffington Post, and then, Bruce, I'll get you to comment on it first. Consumerism, he writes, it must be noted, afflicts not merely the upper class in affluent societies, but also the middle class and many in the working class. Large numbers of people across society believe that they work merely to make ends meet, but an examination of their shopping lists and closets reveals that they spend good parts of their income on status goods such as brand name clothing, the right kind of car, and other assorted items that they don't really need. It used to be about, Bruce, I guess, keeping up with the Joneses. Is it still about that?
You know, I don't know if it really ever was as simple as that. I think, you know, there's a homily that makes the rounds in corporate life that says, you know, dress for the job you want, not the job you have. And I think society, and I have to say with all due respect to our fellow guests, particularly American society, we tend to extend that principle to what we drive, what we live in, the neighborhood that we choose, the schools our kids go to. We are dressing for the job we want. And in a society that's based really extensively on the principle of optimism, on the idea that tomorrow will be better than today, it's hardly surprising, but it's also wickedly destructive.
Are we all about keeping up with the Joneses still, Alan? No?
No, I don't think so. I agree with you. I don't think it was ever as simple as that. You know, the European culture, for instance, was, you know, I was brought up in the UK, whereas if you walked around with stuff that was new, people looked down the nose at you because you were trying to show off your nouveau riche. So it's always been more complex than that. I think it's time pressure. I think the comment that was being made that we feel pressured, therefore we take simple actions. Oh, I need this, I can't be bothered to get it fixed, I can't be bothered to sort it out, I'm going to go buy a new one, and I've got the space to put it, is much more to the point.
I don't know this, so I'm going to just put this out here. Who on this program's got kids? Who's got kids? Bruce has got kids?
I do.
Both people in Connecticut have got kids? Okay.
Yep.
Let me start. Okay, Anthony, to you first, and then I want to get Jill, and then I want to get Bruce on this. How much stuff do your kids have in relation to what you had when you were a kid? Anthony, go.
Unambiguously, a lot more. When my son was born, I calculated a 30% increase in all of my possessions, household possessions, just to take care of a child, or so I thought. New furniture, toys that came in. When he was a year old, I put him on the floor and I surrounded him with all objects that had come into the home and essentially were gifted to him, his possessions, to the extent that a one-year-old can actually own objects and have possessions. And I found that those objects had tripled, that there were 3 times. And so this one-year-old had more than 150 objects there on the floor. And this I thought was quite extraordinary. And I realized we're hyper-nucleated families in North America, definitely so in the United States. On average, middle-class families are not living near their larger extended family. They don't interact with grandparents and relatives as frequently. People send gifts. Objects come in at a volume that essentially is unchecked. And so we accumulate lots of stuff. And this has forced me to think about my own consumption, about buying toys. We started a new process in my own house where I walk through with my son, who's now 4 years old. Every couple weeks we take a paper bag, a brown bag, and we pick 10 toys that he's not playing with. And we put them in the bag and we take them to Goodwill. And the reward, there always has to be a reward, is that he gets to choose one new toy. And it's a used toy from Goodwill. It costs $1.50 at most. It could be brand new from Toys R Us. He doesn't know the difference. He loves it. And we're trying to create a mechanism, a tradition, which I think we never had, at least in sort of post-industrial and certainly post-war United States, a tradition for moving stuff out of the home, unused possessions.
What a nice idea. Jill, how many kids you got?
I have one. And he's turning 5 in a couple of weeks, and it's interesting that you asked this question because for his birthday party, I sent a note that said, in lieu of gifts, please donate to, and we chose Willow the chinchilla at the Children's Museum. So that was, even though I wanted to donate to the NRDC, I thought maybe he's 5, maybe he needs something a little more tangible. So we're going to, in honor of his birthday, donate to an animal at the museum that he can touch and feel, and he'll have a private meeting with. So he understands this is in honor of his birthday.
Yeah, what does he think of that idea, though?
This is what do I think this is an appetite that we create for children. You know what I mean?
Now, I'm just wondering what he thinks of that idea.
He loves it.
He does like the idea.
He's talking about Willow the chinchilla.
Okay.
He loves it. I was going to say, we create this need for the kids. They don't know. It's like they don't know the taste of sugar really until we give it to them. Now, I'm not obviously saying no sugar, but we are creating this sort of drug where everything is a gift. Everything is, oh, here's a reward. And I love, Anthony's reward, but it's like for Hanukkah, people are like, are you giving 8 gifts a night? I'm taking away the joy of lighting the candle. I realize he's only 5, but you take away the joy of things when you keep piling. It's sort of like, how do you choose a cereal? There are a million cereals to choose from. I mean, it's just too much choice, and I think that we as adults are creating this need for children. He gets gifts all the time, not all the time, but sort of like, if you're a good listener for a week, we're going to get that one, Lego block project that you want. So that feeling of earning something just because it's Hanukkah, it's Christmas, it's Kwanzaa, whatever, you get 100 gifts. I have my clients, and I advocate all the time that people give experiences, as you were saying, rather than gifts. A consumable, some wine, massages, a dinner out. Then because you give that sweater and it's not the right color, and you know what? It stays in a box in the hallway, and you don't return it. By the time you return it, you don't get the price for it, and then you feel guilty because you didn't return it. Oh my God, I better wear that sweater, but I don't like it anyway. So to be able to give people a choice of what they want, and I think that's something we're creating an appetite for the kids. And so I just say, don't start with it. Ask grandparents to give money for their, college tuition or for their first car, something they can feel.
Right on. Bruce, how many kids you got?
Well, my wife and I have 3 between us, but they're all grown. So,
but once upon a time?
Once upon a time. Well, my experience is a bit different in the sense that I'm getting my report card back now on how I raised them, right? And I'll tell you without any doubt that, Frank Lloyd Wright used to fret that we were becoming janitors to our possessions. Kids are absolutely able to observe that, and they pack that away, and they use that information later on, and they make pretty smart choices about how much of that janitorial work is worth the trouble and how much isn't. I won't sell out my kids individually, but I will say that I'm getting my report card, and it's pretty interesting.
Is there a part of this, though, that as well-intentioned as Jill's situation is regarding not having this be a buying opportunity, but rather having this be a giving opportunity in some respects, I wonder if this generation of kids is so spoiled, some of them who have lived in spoiled circumstances, that they will be upset with their parents for, Mom, you just blew it. I missed this opportunity to get a whole bunch of toys and, and stuff, and, I'm taking care of a walrus instead or something like that. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Well, it points up what I think is one of the biggest...
Chinchilla.
Chinchilla. One of the biggest issues around overconsumption that tends not to get talked about enough, and that is social competition. We love to pin this on marketing, and marketing owns a certain amount of accountability for the problem. But the real underlying issue is social competition. This group of kids, millennials and younger, have been raised by their middle class parents as little trophies. And as a social scientist, I hope will reinforce once they get to adolescence, a lot of the raising is being done by their peers, who reinforce this scorekeeping mentality. So it becomes a real hard job. And I have to tell you honestly, I got mine are too old. I missed that pain. I don't know how I would deal with it.
Andrea, let me ask you about how you feel the consumerism of this generation is affecting this younger generation.
By this generation, do you mean sort of my parents' generation?
No,
or
I
think I fit sort of somewhere in the middle of this generational discussion. But I can talk about my generation a little bit, just in the sense that a lot of us are graduating from university now, and we're not offered the same economic opportunities that our parents received. So we have more education, and yet we don't have access to the same level of middle-class jobs as our parents might have expected. So in fact, I think what we're seeing with my generation, and I'm in my late 20s, is sort of a push back towards living in the city. Not even, I mean, I live in Vancouver, so the idea of owning a home to me and filling it full of stuff is actually mildly farcical. Like, it's not something that's part of my reality at all. I live in an apartment, I have a bicycle. If there are too many books on my desk, then I get rid of some of them. I can't really speak about tweens or kids that are being raised with smartphones and the idea that, you know, they have to have a new one every year in order to keep up. But I can say that I feel like the value system of my generation has shifted, and that's partially to do with our economic circumstances, and it's partially to do with the fact that, you know, we don't necessarily want all of the trappings of middle-class life that we saw our parents choosing.
But you might if you could afford them.
Not personally, I would say no. No, I prefer it here.
Okay,
with my
Bruce has a
bicycle
follow-up.
and in my apartment. I don't really, I mean, I have some student debt, but when I look at sort of the graphs of consumer debt, I don't have that type of personal debt. It's a freeing thing. I mean, who knows? I don't have kids yet, so maybe things will change at that point, but I kind of highly doubt it. Of the friends I have who are having kids now, they're living in apartments the same way they did before, and they're just sort of making it work.
Okay, Bruce?
So I feel like...
Whoops, hang on a second, Andrea. Bruce wants it.
I think the experience that she describes has some strong historical echoes, and I'll add some energy to this debate. So when I got out of school and went into the workforce in 1980, unemployment was right about exactly what it is today.
Yeah, you were in the middle of a recession then too.
That's right, and inflation was running at above 10%, to the point where the government was actually regulating salaries. And mortgage rates were at like 13 and a half. It was a mess, a hopeless mess. And what followed almost immediately was the greatest orgy of consumption in modern times, the 1980s. So I wonder whether any paradigms we might think we're building right now might be a little rickety when things turn around, as they always do.
We talked about technology as well.
So it's unemployment is one indicator, yes, but then there's also the fact that the types of jobs that we're getting access to are changing. So the manufacturing sector in North America is sort of crumbling, as we know. And we're working in warehouses that store stuff and ship it out from Amazon to other places. That's something that's happening. And so it's not just unemployment, because a lot of us have jobs. You know, we just have several part-time jobs. And I think that that's something like, I don't know how broad you want this conversation to get, but if we look at the types of economic decisions we're making in Canada, let's take the oil sands, for example. We're not setting up manufacturing here, we're sending it offshore. And so we're seeing sort of like a tertiarization of the economy. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to ever have the same type of purchasing power as we did before.
Alan.
The other thing that's affecting purchasing, I think, and consumption is those changes in technology, not planned obsolescence. But for instance, we know teenagers now regard their device, cell phone or whatever it is, as an essential. Comes up and everything. The newest version has to be an essential, because not only is it fashion, but you're restricted in what you can do with your peer groups unless you have that particular technology. And you see that through a whole bunch of products all the way up the consumption line. So part of what we're now defining as necessary for my lifestyle, not to keep up with the Joneses, but to, if you like, experience the contemporary environment, has also changed. So you've got that as a pressure in there as well.
Well, we've clearly established what the problem is here, but I want to get Jill into this part of the conversation now, because part of what you do is to try to get people to part with some of their stuff. And I want to know what happens when you go to these people and you say to them, okay, this, out. How do they react?
Well, it's interesting. I'm just hearing the point that, what do we regard as essential? And what we do on Consumed is we tell people you can keep everything that's essential for work or for school or obviously for your health or, making food. But everything else goes, and I mean everything else. Truck it up, we have moving trucks, box everything up, goes to the warehouse for a few weeks. And then I tell them they can pick 10 non-essential items. So things that, that aren't obviously essential. And it's so interesting how often when it's not absolutely necessary, they often have trouble coming up with, I don't know, what's non-essential. And they live without all this stuff for weeks. And then they have this, hopefully, our hope is that they have this aha moment in that they have been drowning and literally consumed with their stuff, and so that they're able to really let go of a lot of it, and I think that's a really interesting way to look at things. What's essential? What do you really need? And when you realize what, you need a few books, that we are truly living in our own kind of warehouses, it's very liberating. They spend time together that they never did before, and they really are able to go through things and realize, I don't need this. It's about when on the show and in general when I go through people's homes, it's about taking literal inventory of their life. Where were they? Where are they? And where do they want to go? Well, so much of their stuff is memorabilia, holding on to the past. I used to wear this. My kids, I brought my child home in this outfit. A lot of it is just, the fear of the future, the fear of growing old. It must be Freudian, the fear of death, because they hold on to the past, and because of that, they're actually not dealing with their present. The past is, I used to fit into really small jeans. Well, the present is, I had a baby and I don't fit into those jeans anymore, but darn it, they looked good on me. And now it's sort of like, okay, well, by the time these jeans come back, stonewashed jeans will be out anyway. So there's a lot of that. Where I used to be this young, pretty, whatever, or I was a single. And this sort of, our sort of description of ourselves in the past is very powerful, and it's hard to let go of these things. So that's what we do, and that's what I try and get people to do, is realize, this is the now. Do the best now. Go into your closet and wear the clothes that fit you now. And when you lose the 50 pounds, go buy those new jeans, girl,
Alan, come on in.
There's
I'm
some external
myself,
changes.
too,
Yeah, there's some external changes that force us to rethink. Empty nesting, for instance, with the decision when the kids have left home, am I going to stay in the home, am I going to downsize to a condominium or a smaller home? So you're forced to think through what you've got. Marriage and remarriage, divorce when you're moving in with somebody, is a force of how much am I going to bring into the new relationship from my old relationship. Geographic mobility. By the time you've got the quote from the mover of how much it's going to cost to take all that stuff, 200 yards down the road.
Maybe get rid of some of that
So
stuff.
you've got some of these external pressures to rethink and resort. And one of the comments that was being made is, how do we make the time for it? In that situation, you're pressured to have to make the time to think about what you do with it.
But Bruce, I do want to follow up on the economic argument, because I wonder how much of our economic well-being in a province, in a country, on a continent where everybody's concerned about the economy underperforming as is, how do we stop buying when we know that if we do stop buying, it's going to hurt the economy even more?
Right. Well, I don't think there's a simple answer to that, but I was moved by the comment about how young people today don't have the same quality of jobs available to them. And if you kind of do the Deming thing and ask why 5 times, the answer quickly gets to, we are generally unwilling to pay what it costs to make products locally. So we own some of the problem that we've got here, because all that manufacturing that got offshore did so in order to service our desire to buy that $1,000 patio set for $250, right? We kind of own that. And in the process, we killed a bunch of jobs in the lower middle class strata, of our economy, and with it, prospects for a lot of people. So one component of the solution that I would propose is that we buy less and buy better. Buy great stuff that doesn't have to be replaced as often. Be willing to pay for that benefit. And if the economy observes our willingness to do that, the economics of local production immediately start to change.
Interesting. I wonder, though, Anthony, can we go back to the days of our parents where they bought a car and were content to have that car for 7, 8, 9, 10 years? or they bought a washer and dryer and were content to have that washer and dryer for a decade. Can we go back there?
I think we can get there, and as Bruce said, it's if the economy responds to that, if manufacturers and the tradition of manufacturing and how we manufacture objects responds to that need, we can get there. We're not there yet, and I think we're far from it. It does require a retooling of Americans, North Americans, Canadians' approach and the decisions that they make when they purchase an object. We've talked a lot about sort of, this dealing with the problem as it is, which are cluttered homes, and taking this moment, Jill spoken a little bit about, taking this time to sort of go through and purge the home. This is, and there's been some discussion about how to do that later on as you become an empty nester, sort of this household cycling. A big driving economic force in North America are households, dual-income households with children. They spend a lot of money on stuff. They're also incredibly busy. The exigencies of raising family now are such that you're pursuing 3 or 4 jobs as a parent. The job of career, the job of raising a child, the child's education, the job of maintaining the home, and of course that job that got you into the business in the first place, that job of maintaining that relationship with your spouse. There's very little time. We have little breathing room to stop and go, okay, I'm going to reorganize my house. But I would say that's not the problem. The problem is, as Bruce I think hit on quite cleverly, is really about the decision underlying the purchase. Do I need this object? And if I do buy this, do I buy the $13.99 version that's available at Walmart or Target, or do I hold out to do a little bit of research and do I buy the $30 version that's less likely to break and will serve longer and not end up in my garage?
Andrea, is it your view that we can... Yeah, sorry, Jill, go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm no economist, but I'm pretty sure that we don't have to buy manufactured items to maintain an economy or to keep an economy. There are plenty of services, restaurants, seamstresses, handymen. There are plenty of things that we can help support without necessarily buying, another pair of shoes. And so I do think manufacturing, of course, could be affected if we stop buying so much. But there are plenty of other things that we can do, like travel and, leisure, things that plenty of people want jobs in.
That's a fair point. With just a few minutes to go here, Andrea, let me bring you in on this one. Is it your view that we can get industry to act in a more sustainable way through our purchasing power?
No. I don't have quite that rosy a view of industry. On one hand, like the choices we make as people and as consumers will have an effect cumulatively. But on the other hand, when people say stuff like that, I think of something like the Dove campaign for Real Beauty, for example. It's nice. They're celebrating people of all different shapes and sizes and races. And on the same, by the same token, though, their parent company, Unilever, sells Fair and Lovely skin lightening cream in India. And so I feel like it's just sort of a larger problem with the way that our economy functions. It's predicated on growth, and people like advertisers will do the things that get people to consume as much as possible.
Okay, let me jump in here, Andrea, because we got 2 minutes left. I want to hear from Bruce and then from Alan.
Yeah, so 2 things really quickly. One is the comment about growth is true, but that is a drug we cannot wean ourselves off easily. As long as there is debt, there must be growth, and unfortunately, we can't turn the clock back on that. And then I think the sort of broader comment about whether industry listens, there are really only 2 things industry understands: the market and the law.
Right.
That's it. So either we, by our behavior, tell companies what to do, or we tell the government to do it for us, which raises, giant moral and philosophical issues. The fact is, and I think the anti-consumerists hate to hear this, but it is a fact, that the most ethical corporations in the world are the ones who market to consumers, and the least ethical corporations in the world are the ones who don't.
Yeah.
Alan, wrap it up, put a bow on it for us.
Yes, there can be a consumer impact, because ultimately the consumer demands better quality. To Bruce's early point, the private sector will have to respond to that. It won't be just price, because people do understand those trade-offs. What has to be come across, though, is the value of focusing on quality has to get across by the corporations.
You've all encouraged me to...
But we will still accumulate stuff.
after having participated in this program, I'm going home and I'm cleaning out my closets right now. Andrea Bennett, thanks for joining us from Vancouver. You're with Adbusters. Anthony Gresh, Connecticut College in Hartford, Connecticut, co-author of Life at Home in the 21st Century. And Jill Pollack, Consumed, HGTV Canada, also there in our Hartford studios. Bruce Philp, the author of Consumer Republic, and Alan Middleton at the Schulich School of Business, York University, both of them here in Toronto. Thanks so much, everybody.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.